we connect the story of the Battle of Jericho to Jesus Christ. So Chris, can you read the Christ connection as a review, please?
The story of Rahab and Jericho is a small example of what Jesus has done for us. By faith, Rahab believed God would win the battle, and she asked the spies to show mercy to her family and keep them safe. When the Israelites attacked Jericho, Rahab and her family received mercy and became part of God's people. Jesus has won against sin and death. Everyone who trusts in Jesus receives mercy and becomes part of God's family forever.
Okay, thank you, Chris. Great job. So last week, if you recall, we also took a closer look at a woman named Rahab from the story. Okay, let's see what we learned. So basically, Rahab, because she welcomed the spies, was saved because of her faith in God in heaven above and on the earth. So likewise, Christians are saved through faith in Jesus Christ. So that's the key point. Last week we learned about from the woman named Rahab. So today, this is our plan. Today, we will have one more class about this story. So what we are going to do is, so I want to discuss a particular, just one single question with the class, and also I want to read some Bible verse from a Hebrew with the class. So that will be what we will do today. Okay. So before we start, let's do our Lord's Prayer. So Chris, do you want to do the Chinese or English this week?
English.
You want to do the English? Okay, I'll do the Chinese. Okay.
Our Father in heaven, hallowed be your name. Your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven.
Okay, so last week, I think I remind you to start with the name of the book. So can you?
Matthew chapter 6, verse 9 to 13.
Good. 马太福音6章9到13节，我们在天上的父，愿人都尊你的名为圣，愿你的国降临，愿你的旨意行在地上，如同行在天上。
Give us today our daily bread. Forgive us our debts as we also have forgiven our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from the evil one.
Give us, 我们日用的饮食，近日赐给我们，免我们的债，如同我们免了人的债，不叫我们遇见试探，救我们脱离凶恶。因为国度、权柄、荣耀，全是你的，直到永远。Amen. Okay, so this is our, now we said our Lord's Prayer. Let's just jump into the first part of our class. I said I want to discuss a question with you, right? Mm-hmm. So let's see. I think I have to go to... Okay, this is the question I want to raise to the class. So what's the most important lesson we learned from the Battle of Jericho? Okay, Chris, what do you think?
Have faith in God.
Have faith in God? Okay, that's a good answer. Oh, okay, yeah, I don't think there's like a absolutely right or wrong answer. I'm really just raise this question as a discussion. Okay, I think your answer is totally valid. So Chris said he thinks to have faith in God. Yeah, I totally agree. So let's go on and take a look. So as we learned from the story, the strategy to conquer the city of Jericho was laid out by God himself, and a seemingly foolish plan, right? So because God simply told Joshua to have the people to march silently around Jericho for 6 days, and then after 7 circles on the 7th day to shout. That's pretty much, that's a seemingly foolish plan in our eye, but we know from the story that that's not foolish at all, right? But yeah, that had to be hard for the Israelites and very confusing for the people of Jericho. The people must thought those Israelites had lost their minds, as a matter of fact. You just imagine they saw from the inside the wall, Israelites are circling around the city silently. It's a little bit freaky, yeah. For lack of better words, yeah. So why God told the Israelites to march around the city these 7 days? I mentioned in the very beginning is to test the faith of Israelites, right? Because you said one of the biggest lesson you learned is to have faith in God. So secondly, it's probably like a psychological warfare. It's a pretty fancy word. So basically, it's just you play people's mind. You make them afraid about you mentally. Okay, so let's take a look at it. I think this is a pretty interesting number. We can take a look. This is a picture of the city of Jericho, right? So this city is 1,000 feet long times 500 feet wide. So it's a mile per circle. And it will normally, on average, it will take an hour to march 1 circle. So basically, on the first day, those Israelites take an hour to march, right? Second day, then again. What happened on the 7th day then, Chris?
7 hours of nonstop marching in desert heat.
Yeah, so I think that gives you a little bit of a perspective. Yeah, it's on the 7th day, it actually took them 7 hours nonstop, and it's in desert heat. So you can see, if you have had experienced hiking before, when we go to the mountain and the hike, if it's like a 3-hour round trip, it's pretty demanding, right? Imagine 7 hours. It's pretty exhausting. Yeah. Okay. But did Israel obey God in this case? They did. Okay. But the Israelites were obedient to God's plan, even when it didn't make sense. So although it seemed foolish, Joshua followed God's instructions to the letter. When the people did finally shout, the masses was collapsed instantly, and Israel won an easy victory. Okay. So, in fact, God has given the city of Jericho to them before they even begin to march around its walls. It was when the people of God, by faith, follow the commands of God, that the walls of Jericho fall down. So it's like many of the story we learned before. It's an amazing miracle performed by God, and God received all the glory as these walls fall down. Okay. So this is so here come with the answer. Again, there's no right or wrong answer. But today I would like to guide the class to believe the most important lesson we learned from the Battle of Jericho is obedience. And Chris, it's interesting you said you think it's have faith in God. I think it's also correct. I agree wholeheartedly, and that's also lead to a very good discussion. There's a very direct and close correlation between your faith and the obedience?
Well, because
Yes, go ahead.
Rahab, right? She wasn't really obedient to God. She was faith. So like, and then the Israelites also were faithful because they believed that if they marched down or marched around, they would get the promised land.
Okay, that's a good point. Okay, good thinking.
Basically.
So obedience, even when God's command seems foolish, brings victory. When we are faced with seemingly insurmountable odds. Do you know what insurmountable means? It's like a kind of big word for you.
Yeah.
What does it mean?
Like 1% to 90%.
Okay, very small odd. Very good. Yeah, insurmountable means unconquerable. Or yes, very, very small odds. You're very good. We must learn that our Jericho victories are won only when our faithful obedience to God is complete. So I think it's very interesting. You see how faithful and the obedience always appear in the same sentence when we talk about Bible's teaching. Did you notice that? Okay. So now let's kind of connect a little bit of the story to our everyday life. Okay. Can you read these slides for the class, Chris, please?
Joshua and the Israelites carried out the commands of God and conquered Jericho. God gave them victory over an enemy that was trying to keep them out of the promised land. So it was with us today. If we have true faith, we are compelled to obey God, and God gives us victory over the enemies that we face throughout life. Obedience is the clear evidence of faith. Our faith is the evidence to others that we truly believe in Him. We can conquer and be victorious through life by faith, a faith that obeys the God who gives us the faith as a free gift.
Yes. So that's like I think this is a very good teaching. When we connect to our everyday life and our own situation, it becomes very, very powerful. So faith is a clear evidence of faith. Obedience is the clear evidence of faith. Okay, it's all connected. So now next, let's just read this Bible verse together to help us internalize what we just learned about the relationship between faith and obedience. Okay. I want to share with you because we are going to read aloud Bible verse this week, this today. I know it might be boring to you because Chris sometimes mentioned say, okay, we're reading a lot of Bible verses, but I don't understand all of them. And sometimes I think it's even a little bit very dry for me. And on top of that, I don't understand the whole thing. And why are we doing that? Okay, I mean, it's an honest question. As a kid, some adults ask the same question, believe it or not. But I think this Bible verse might help answer your question, because I was reading a book recently. It's called My Uttermost for the Highest. So it was written by. It basically is a summary of the. I think it's a sermon by a brother named Oswald Chambers. So anyway, it's in Chinese. So I didn't read. I'm not reading the English version. So I can only this phrase also caught my attention. I want to share with you, but I can only share with you in Chinese now. But you understand Chinese, right? 他说，耶稣说：“我对你们说的话就是灵，就是生命。 这是耶稣说的啊。耶稣说：“我对你们说的话就是灵，就是生命。”我们说什么？就是 as like you complained, as some of the grown up。我们说什么呀？哎呀，一直以来，圣经对我们来说不过是一大堆的话语啊，有的时候你说你是一大堆话呀 ，it's contradictory, right? It's not adding up. 因为耶稣不是这样说的呀，耶稣说我对你所说的话就是灵，就是生命。可是我们说，哎呀，圣经中对我来说就是一大堆的话呀。Where's the disconnect then? We have to find it because we know God doesn't lie, right? Okay, so this is what this brother Oswald Chambers said in his sermon. I don't know what you think. I think it make a lot of sense to me. 他说，因为耶稣在某种特殊情况下，你懂吗？他要向我们再说一遍，就说 everything we read about the Bible verse, although we may think it's boring or we don't understand, it lay a foundation. It's a prerequisite because at some point, as in a very special circumstances, we don't know when, we don't know how, but it's by God's will. Jesus is going to explain to you or say the verses to you himself. How special. Okay, so just think about it. So it's important we read these verses, okay? Because then when Jesus come to see you, he said, okay, did you haven't even read that? Okay, how am I going to explain to you in person? 是不是? Okay, so that's what I think. Okay, at least that's totally my personal understanding. Okay, so with that, let's read this verse. Can you read this verse starting from the name of the book? Okay, go ahead.
2 Corinthians chapter 10, verses 3 to 6. For though we live in the world, we do not wage war as the world does. The weapons we fight with are not the weapons of this world. On the contrary, they have divine powers to demolish strongholds. We demolish arguments and every pretension that sets itself up against the knowledge of God. And we take captive every thought to make it obedient to Christ. And we will be ready to punish every act of disobedience once your obedience is complete.
Okay. Do you like this Bible verse? You still don't understand it, right? Do you understand a little bit? No, not at all. Okay, that's okay. If you can be honest, even if you don't explain it at all, just try to connect with today's the story of what did we learn? Battle of Jericho. I can explain to you a little bit, and then you read again. At least you know this is all God's word. It's in you. You have read it once and twice, and then when you're grown up, you will read it more. And again, then, 因为耶稣在某种特殊情况下，他亲自会向你再说一遍。You got it? Okay? Okay, so my understanding, it could be very shallow. I'm just trying to make a very direct connection for you and a comparison. So look, we live in the world, we do not wage wars as the world does. Is that somehow connected with how the Israelites win the Battle of Jericho? Mm-hmm. Did they wage their war as the world does? Mm-hmm. Very unconventional, right? Right? Mm-hmm. So how they basically just listen to have faith in God and circle around the city and shout. Mm-hmm. Is that how a general will conquer a city? No. No. Okay. So we do not wage war as the world does. So the weapons we fight with are not the weapon of the world. So what are the weapons we fight with? God. Very good. God and our faith in God. Very good. So our unconventional weapon has divine power. Like I said, only God has divine power to demolish stronghold, right? So stronghold, in this story, the stronghold is the city of Jericho, right? You understand what strongholds are, right? So in our today's life, there's also a lot of strongholds, arguments, pretension, and then all these, their purpose is against God. They set itself up against the knowledge of God. That's also a stronghold. Strongholds doesn't have to be physical, you understand? Okay. So, and we take captive every thought to make it obedient to God. And we will be ready to punish every act of disobedience. So basically, again, God is telling us the importance of have faith in Him and be obedient, because we can only punish every act of disobedience if our obedience is complete. Okay, I hope this helps you a little bit. It's very rich in content. You need to read it again and again to understand it. You may even need some personal experience to understand it better. But after I explain to you, can you make a little bit connection between this verse to the story of the Bible of Jericho?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So remember, and more importantly, what I share with you, when in the future, whenever you think, this is a little bit dry to read the Bibles and read the Bible, and it's a lot of words. Whenever you think that, so what can help you pull back what I teach you today? Because 因为耶稣在某种特殊情况下要怎么样？他要跟你再说一遍。You see, remember English is God is someday somehow he himself is going to explain what you don't understand in person. Mm-hmm. Isn't that special? Mm-hmm. Okay. So thank you for your patience. I know I'm like throwing a lot of knowledge and information and the Bible verse at you, but it's good for you. Okay. So although Rahab and the Christians are saved by an act of grace through faith, true faith requires and is amplified by actions. It is not enough to say, I believe God, and then live in an ungodly manner. If we truly believe God, our desire is to obey God. Our faith is put to work. So here it's interesting is that the action actually is to obey. Okay? We make every effort to do exactly what God says and keep His commandments. Okay. Now, guess again, another Bible verse. This time is a short one. Okay. Can you go ahead and read for the class?
James chapter 2, verse 26.
Mm-hmm.
As the body without the spirit is dead, so faith without deeds is dead.
Very, very good. So I want to give you a visual picture. We're talking about the body without the spirit is dead. Faith without deed is dead. Look at this picture. Rahab, when Rahab say she believed in Israelites' God and she said they are spy. What she did, she put she obeyed, right? She put this red rope out of his window, right? See how obvious it is. She's saying to the world, she believed in God and then she obeyed. So I thought it was like a pretty good visual explanation to say, hey, this is faith with action. Okay? So that goes into our review our big picture question of this unit. How can we glory God? So can you read this slides for the class?
One way God received glory through this miracle was by Israelites, obedient to God's plan, even when it didn't make sense. They just keep moving forward in faith. What was true for the Israelites is true for us today. When we love and obey God, He can receive glory no matter where we are.
So the answer, if you remember, was the answer to our big picture question.
We can glorify God by loving Him and obeying.
So did the Israelites glorify God in this story? How did they do that?
Obeying.
Very, very good. You got it. So next, I think what we're going to do is I know Chris is tired because Chris had a Chinese class, but so it's okay. You can handle it. So the second part of the class, I say we're going to read a whole lot more Bible verses, but I'll tell you why after you read it. Okay. So what are we going to do is we're going to read a lot of the Bible verse from the Hebrew. So I'll help you out. I know you are tired today. Okay. So what we'll do is let me see how many slides there are. So you do one, I do one. Okay, we alternate. That's good. You start.
Hebrews chapter 11, verse 1-3. Now faith is confidence in what we hope for and assurance about what we do not see. This is what the ancients were commended for. By faith, we understand that the universe was formed at God's command, so that what is seen was not made out of what was visible.
Okay. And without faith, it is impossible to please God, because everyone who comes to Him must believe that He exists and that He rewards those who earnestly seek Him. By faith, Noah, when warned about things not yet seen, in holy fear, built an ark to save his family. By his faith, he condemned the world and became heir of the righteousness that is in keeping with faith. So here you can see from here, a lot of the verses is going to start with the word by faith and a person's name. So you still remember who is Noah, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So go on. You read this, the next one.
By faith, Abraham, when called to go to a place he would later receive as his inheritance, obeyed and went, even though he did not know where he was going. By faith, he made his home in the promised land like a stranger in a foreign country. He lived in tents, as did Isaac and Jacob, who were heirs with him of the same promise. For he was looking forward to the city with foundation, whose architect and builder is God.
By faith. You remember the story of Abraham?
Yeah.
You do, right? You remember the story of Isaac and Jacob?
Yeah.
You did. Okay. So let's go on. Oh, another one. And by faith, even Sarah, who was past childbearing age, was enabled to bear children because she considered him faithful, who had made the promise. And so from this one man, and he, as good as dead, come descendants as numerous as the star in the sky, and as countless as the sand on the seashore. You remember Sarah, right? Very good. Go on. You do the next one.
By faith, Moses, when he had grown up, refused to be known as the son of Pharaoh's daughter. He chose to be mistreated along with the people of God rather than to enjoy the fleeting pleasure of sin. He regarded disgrace for the sake of Christ as of greater value than the treasures of Egypt, because he was looking ahead to his reward. By faith, he left Egypt, not fearing the king's anger. He preserved because he saw him who is invisible.
Oh, again, by faith, then a person's name. This time, who's that person?
Moses.
You remember Moses' story, right? Okay, let's go on. my turn. By faith, he kept the Passover and the application of blood, so that the destroyer of the firstborn would not touch the firstborn of Israel. By faith, the people passed through the Red Sea as on dry land, but when the Egyptians tried to do so, they were drowned. You have read the story. Okay. Go on.
By faith, the walls of Jericho fell, after the army had marched around them for 7 days. By faith, the prostitute Rahab because she welcomed the spies, was not killed with those who were disobedient.
Yay, finally, that's what we learned today. Wall of Jericho and Rahab. You see, because we're in the Old Testament now, right? Hebrew is from the New Testament. Hey, the exactly story, those names, this city all appears in the Bible verse in the New Testament. Okay, let's do more. We're almost there, okay? These were all commended for their faith, yet none of them received what had to be promised, since God has planned something better for us, so that only together with us would they be made perfect. What God planned better for us? God sent Jesus. Very good. Okay. The reason I want to read all these Bible verses for you is, as I keep reminding you, it really is a good summary of what all the Bible stories we have learned so far, right? Mm-hmm. A highlight of it. So the Apostle Paul said, as this Bible verse said, for everything that was written in the past was written to teach us, so that through endurance and the encouragement of the scriptures, we might have hope. Okay, so everything we studied, all the story we read, and everything we read in the Bible, everything written in the past, these stories were written to teach us, so that through the endurance taught in the scriptures and the encouragement they provide, we might have hope. So again, I guess I want to emphasize for you is really I want to try to tell you is, I guess for now is convince you, is at least lead you think that, so all the stories we studied, they're really more than just stories. We can probably, it's more appropriate, we call them faith in action. You understand? Okay, so from now on, whenever we say, oh, we're going to study a Bible story, or we're going to tell a story, I think it's important we know it really is more than a story. It's a faith in action. Got it? Okay. Yeah, thank you for your patience. I know you are very tired today after your Chinese class. This is a whole lot more to sink in. But let's do our prayer, then we'll end our Bible study today, okay? So God, thank you for having plan for our lives. And thank you that your plan included sending Jesus to save us from our sin. Help us to love and obey you for your glory. Amen. Okay, so with that, we are going to conclude our class today. Have a blessed week, everyone.
谢谢。
Okay. 好。
Let me stop recording.